Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. We've got a super interesting topic lined up for you all today in the realm of human resources management.
Always a hot topic.
It is, it is. But we're going to be focusing on HRM specifically in public and nonprofit organizations.
So not your typical corporate HR.
Right. And to guide us through this, we've got a chapter excerpt here titled Introduction to Human Resources Management in the Public and Nonprofit Sector. So
Sounds dense.
a little bit. But our mission today is to really break it down, see what makes this area of HRM unique. What are the challenges, the trends, all that good stuff. So where should we even begin?
Well, I think the first thing to remember is that public and nonprofit organizations, they're not driven by profit like in the private sector.
Right, right. Their focus is serving the public good.
Exactly. Providing those essential services, like upholding laws, education.
So like everything from the FBI to like
Fair enough.
our local libraries, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Hmm.
And another big difference is their funding. Public sector organizations are primarily funded through taxes.
Which means accountability is huge.
Oh, yeah. Transparency, too. It's a whole different ballgame compared to like a corporation answerable to its shareholders.
I see. So that really shapes their whole approach to managing people.
Definitely. There's a much bigger emphasis on fairness, equity, merit-based systems.
And that's where all those like civil service exams and stuff come in, right? Making sure hiring is based on qualifications, not like who you know.
Exactly. Not on political connections or anything like that. It's about finding the best fit for the role based on merit.
So really different motivations than in the for-profit world.
For sure. And those motivations impact everything from organizational structure to how they attract and retain talent.
Fascinating. So we've talked about the public sector. What about nonprofits? Do they also have their own unique quirks?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, nonprofits are incredibly diverse, right? From like massive organizations like the Red Cross to much smaller local ones.
Right, right. And they're all mission-driven, not focused on like making profits for shareholders.
Exactly. Any surplus they generate gets reinvested back into fulfilling their mission. It's called the non-distribution constraint.
Hmm.
It's a key part of what makes them nonprofits.
That makes sense. So if they have a really successful fundraising year, that money goes right back into, say, expanding their programs or outreach efforts.
Precisely. And let's not forget another defining feature of nonprofits: volunteers.
Oh, right. That adds a whole other layer to HR, doesn't it? Managing both paid staff and volunteers.
It does. You've got different motivations, different levels of commitment. It's definitely a balancing act. But even beyond that, both public and nonprofit organizations face some pretty serious challenges in managing their human resources.
Yeah, the chapter really dug into that, didn't it? It seems like economic pressures are a constant headache.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
These organizations often operate on pretty tight budgets.
And the demand for their services, especially during tough economic times, it just keeps rising.
Right. So you've got this combination of limited resources and increased demand. It creates a real strain.
So how do they cope? I mean, they can't exactly cut essential services.
It's tough. A lot of times we see hiring freezes, budget cuts, and a greater reliance on what we call non-standard work arrangements.
So instead of traditional full-time roles, they might rely more on part-time workers, contractors, maybe even temp agencies.
Exactly. It can provide some flexibility, cost savings in the short term, but it comes with its own set of challenges too.
Yeah, like what about employee benefits, job security, and maintaining morale when your workforce is constantly in flux?
Those are all valid concerns. And there's also the whole debate around privatization.
Oh, yeah, that's been in the news a lot lately. Governments and nonprofits contracting out services to private companies?
Right, and it's a complex issue. Some argue it can boost efficiency and reduce costs, while others worry about transparency and accountability when you've got for-profit companies involved in essential services.
Definitely a lot to consider there. And of course, we can't ignore the elephant in the room technology. It's changing every facet of how we work, and I imagine HRM is right at the forefront of that.
Absolutely. Just look at the rise of e-government. Citizens can now access services online, pay bills, you name it. It's a whole new world.
It is. I can see the benefits for citizens, but how does this translate into challenges for HR professionals?
Well, think about the skills you need in today's workforce. You need people who are comfortable with technology, who can navigate digital platforms.
Makes sense. So it's not just about recruiting tech-savvy people, but also training existing employees, helping them adapt to these new technologies.
Right. And it's not just about the technical skills either. Technology is changing the way we communicate, how we collaborate, even how we approach work-life balance.
It's like a domino effect. Are there any examples of, governments actually using technology to improve their HRM practices?
Oh, for sure. The
It-
city of Boston, for example, they implemented a new cloud-based HR system, streamlined everything from payroll to performance reviews.
Wow, so it freed up HR staff to focus on more strategic work.
Exactly. And it actually boosted employee satisfaction too, because it was so much easier for them to access information and manage their benefits.
So it's not about technology being the enemy. It's about using it strategically to create a more efficient and effective system.
Absolutely. It's a tool just like anything else. But technology isn't the only force shaping HRM in these sectors. We also have to consider the impact of social and cultural changes.
Right, things are always evolving, and the U.S. workforce is becoming increasingly diverse, isn't it?
Oh, incredibly so. We're seeing growth in minority groups, more foreign-born workers, folks from all different socioeconomic backgrounds.
Which is a great thing, bringing more perspectives and experiences to the table.
It is. It's a strength. But it also presents new challenges for HRM. Organizations have to be intentional about creating inclusive environments where everyone feels valued and respected.
That's where things like diversity training and cultural sensitivity come in, right?
Exactly. And it's not just about ticking boxes and meeting compliance requirements.
It's about actually fostering a culture where differences are not just tolerated but celebrated.
Exactly. And on top of that, you've got different generations working side by side, each with their own unique set of values and expectations about work.
Right, from baby boomers to Gen Z, it's a real generational mix.
It is. And think about it. You might have baby boomers who really value face-to-face communication and stability working alongside millennials who are digital natives and crave flexibility work-life integration.
Talk about a clash of cultures.
It can be. It definitely requires a shift in mindset, both from managers and employees, to really make it work.
It's about recognizing that each generation brings something unique to the table, right?
Exactly. And creating an environment where those different strengths can complement each other. And it's about leveraging those different strengths. Like you said, right, each generation brings something unique.
Yeah, exactly. But the chapter also mentions some concerns about, generational differences and how they might impact HRM. It's not all like sunshine and roses, right?
Oh, definitely not. For instance, millennials tend to have a shorter tenure at jobs compared to like baby boomers or Gen X.
So organizations are dealing with higher turnover among younger employees.
Right. And they're trying to figure out, well, how do we keep them engaged? How do we create meaningful career paths for them?
I wonder if it has something to do with how millennials were raised, I mean, they grew up in a time of rapid technological advancement, economic uncertainty. Maybe they just approach work differently.
There's probably some truth to that, yeah. Millennials, they tend to really prioritize purpose-driven work, and they value things like flexibility, work-life balance.
It's not just about climbing the corporate ladder anymore.
Right. It's about feeling like your work has meaning and having a life outside of work, too.
Which makes sense, Life is about more than just a paycheck.
Exactly. And HRM has to adapt to that,
Yeah,
It's not enough to just offer a competitive salary and some benefits.
You have to create a work environment that actually aligns with those values.
Precisely. But all of this, the need to attract and retain talent, it all kind of makes me think about the rising cost of education. College is so expensive these days, and the student debt burden is just crazy. How does that factor into all of this?
Yeah, I mean, if you need a college degree to even get your foot in the door at most organizations, that creates a barrier for entry for some people, doesn't it?
It does. Especially for public and nonprofit organizations. They might not be able to offer the same salaries as, like, big corporations.
Yeah.
But there are things they can do.
Like what?
Well, some organizations offer tuition reimbursement programs, for example. Or they partner with educational institutions to create more affordable training opportunities.
So it's about thinking outside the box, being creative in how you attract and develop talent, even when resources are limited.
Exactly. And speaking of limited resources, let's not forget about the baby boomers who are starting to retire.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other challenge, isn't it?
It is. This mass exodus of experienced workers, it creates a real issue for knowledge transfer, succession planning.
It's like losing all that institutional knowledge and experience. How do you even begin to capture all of that?
It takes a lot of proactive planning. Organizations need to identify those key roles and start developing succession plans early on.
So don't wait until someone's about to walk out the door.
Exactly. Start preparing for that transition well in advance. And, mentorship programs can be really helpful too.
Yeah, pairing younger employees with those seasoned veterans.
Right. Creating those opportunities for knowledge sharing, building that institutional memory.
That's smart. But it occurs to me that public and nonprofit organizations, they might actually have an advantage when it comes to attracting experienced workers.
How so?
Well, I'm thinking of people who are retiring from the private sector. Maybe they're looking for something more purpose-driven, a chance to give back to their community or make a difference in the world.
I see what you mean. They might be willing to take a lower salary if it means doing work that they find more fulfilling.
Exactly. So a retired engineer might be drawn to a nonprofit focused on, say, environmental conservation, even if it doesn't pay as well as their corporate job did.
It's about finding the right fit, right?
Right.
Matching people's skills and passions with the needs of the organization.
Exactly. But even with all these creative solutions, HRM in these sectors, it's not without its challenges. And one of the biggest ones, I think, is the sheer complexity of the legal landscape.
Oh, yeah. The legal stuff can be a real maze.
Yeah.
You've got laws, regulations, executive orders. It's enough to make your head spin.
So what are some of the key legal areas that, HR professionals in these sectors really need to have a handle on?
Well, they're the big ones that apply across the board, like Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, prohibiting discrimination.
Right. And the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Exactly. But then you also have laws specific to the public sector, things like the merit system principles, which ensure fairness in hiring and promotions.
And all the regulations around collective bargaining and whistleblower protection. It sounds like you need a law degree to work in HR.
It can feel that way sometimes.
Hmm.
But staying up to date on the legal side is crucial.
So professional development is key.
Absolutely. And having access to legal counsel that specializes in employment law?
Makes sense. You don't want to be caught off guard.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
But, beyond the legal complexities, there's another trend that I've been noticing that's really fascinating.
Oh, tell me more.
It's this growing interconnectedness between the public, nonprofit, and private sectors. They're not operating in silos as much anymore.
You see more collaboration, more partnerships.
Exactly. And even a blurring of the lines between these traditionally separate spheres.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, imagine, a city government partnering with a nonprofit and a private tech company to develop a new app to help residents access affordable housing.
So you've got government bureaucrats working side by side with social workers and tech entrepreneurs.
Exactly. Each entity brings its own unique perspective, its own organizational culture.
That sounds like it could lead to both innovation and some serious clashes.
Oh, for sure, it's a balancing act. And that's where HRM becomes even more crucial. They need to create an environment where those diverse groups can actually work together effectively.
So it's about bridging those cultural divides, fostering communication, finding that common ground.
Precisely. HRM professionals in those scenarios, they need to be master facilitators, diplomats, it takes a whole new skill set.
This is really making me rethink the role of HRM. It's not just about hiring and firing anymore. It's about so much more than that.
It is.
Yeah.
It's about building bridges, navigating complex legal landscapes, adapting to a world that's constantly changing. It's a strategic function that's absolutely vital to any organization's success, but especially in the public and nonprofit sectors.
Well said. So let's dive a little deeper into that, How can HRM actually contribute to the effectiveness and sustainability of these organizations? What does success look like?
Well, it starts with attracting and retaining top talent, right? And in today's job market, it's not enough to just post a job opening and wait for the applications to roll in.
You have to be more proactive.
Definitely. You have to build relationships with potential candidates, sell them on why your organization is a great place to work.
So it's about marketing the organization just like you'd market a product to consumers.
Exactly. Highlight your mission, your values, your culture. Show them why their work will be meaningful, how they can make a difference.
Okay, that makes sense. But once you've attracted those talented people, how do you keep them around? How do you keep them engaged and motivated?
That's where professional development comes in, creating clear career paths and fostering a supportive and inclusive environment.
So people feel valued, like they have opportunities to grow.
Right, and they need to know that their contributions are appreciated. It's not just about the job itself, it's about the entire employee experience.
You're creating a workplace where people feel like they belong, where they can thrive.
Exactly. But let's be real, resources are often limited in the public and nonprofit sectors. So how do you create that ideal work environment when you're dealing with tight budgets and constant pressure to do more with less?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. But that's where creativity comes in. finding cost-effective ways to support employee development, maybe leveraging technology to streamline some processes, and fostering a culture of collaboration, you know?
So even small changes can have a big impact.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the little things that make all the difference, you know? A handwritten thank you note, a flexible work schedule, giving employees a voice, letting them share their ideas.
I like that. Those little gestures can go a long way. But let's not sugarcoat it, you know? There's some serious challenges facing HRM in these sectors. What are some of the things that keep you up at night? What are your biggest worries?
Honestly, the growing skills gap. As technology evolves so rapidly, the nature of work is changing too. And there's a real risk that the workforce won't have the skills to meet those new demands.
So there's a mismatch between what employers need and what workers are equipped to do.
Exactly. And this is especially concerning in fields like healthcare, technology, data analytics. The demand for those skills is skyrocketing, but there aren't enough qualified people to fill those roles.
So how do we fix that?
Well, it requires a multi-pronged approach. We need to invest more in education and training programs, create more opportunities for apprenticeships, on-the-job training, and we need to foster better partnerships between educational institutions and employers.
So it's about preparing the future workforce, but also upskilling the current workforce.
Exactly. Help people adapt to those changing demands. And it's not just about technical skills either.
Right, right. We talked about that earlier. Those soft skills, communication, problem solving, critical thinking, those are crucial too.
Absolutely. Those are the skills that differentiate humans from machines. You know, those are the skills that will be in high demand even as technology keeps advancing.
This is really giving me a lot to think about. But, you know, we've talked about the challenges. Now let's talk about the future. Okay. What trends are shaping the future of HRM in these sectors? What should we prepare for?
Well, one trend that's already having a huge impact is the rise of remote work.
Oh, yeah, that's been a big one. The pandemic really forced organizations to embrace remote work. Do you think it's here to stay?
I think for a lot of organizations and a lot of roles, yes. But it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Some jobs just can't be done remotely, and some people really thrive in a traditional office setting.
Right. It depends on the nature of the work and the individual's preferences.
Exactly. So it's about finding that right balance, offering flexibility where you can, but also recognizing the value of in-person interaction.
And that's where HRM comes in, right? Figuring out how to manage this hybrid workforce.
Exactly. They need to develop policies and procedures that support remote work, make sure those remote employees still feel connected, and figure out how to manage a geographically dispersed workforce.
It sounds like HR professionals need to be masters of adaptation.
They do. And another trend that's gaining momentum is the use of data analytics in HRM.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Organizations are using data to track everything from employee engagement to performance metrics.
So making more data-driven decisions about talent management.
Precisely. Data can help you identify trends, spot potential problems, and make better decisions about hiring, training, even compensation.
It's a powerful tool, but I also wonder about the ethical implications, you know? Employee privacy is a big concern.
You're right. Data privacy is absolutely paramount. Organizations have to be transparent about how they're collecting and using that data, and they have to make sure they're complying with all the relevant privacy laws.
So finding that balance between leveraging data to improve HRM practices while also respecting those privacy concerns.
Exactly. It's about responsible data management and ethical decision-making. And, you know, while we're talking about trends, we can't forget about artificial intelligence.
AI, how is that playing into HRM?
Well, it has the potential to automate a lot of those routine tasks that HR professionals currently spend so much time on.
Like payroll processing, scheduling, even maybe parts of the recruitment process.
Exactly. And that frees up HR staff to focus on more strategic work, you know, things like talent development, employee engagement, fostering a positive work culture.
So AI could actually make HR jobs more fulfilling.
In a lot of ways, yes. It's about letting technology handle those repetitive tasks so that humans can focus on the things that require creativity, empathy, critical thinking.
I like that. Humans and machines working together.
Exactly. It's about using AI to augment human capabilities, not replace them.
This is all so fascinating. It seems like the future of HRM is all about embracing technology, adapting to change, and finding ways to make work more fulfilling for people.
I couldn't agree more. It's an exciting time to be working in this field, that's for sure. And it's only going to get more interesting as these trends continue to play out.
Well, you've definitely given me a lot to think about, and I'm sure our listeners are feeling the same way. It's clear that HRM is not a static field. It's constantly evolving, and the people who embrace that evolution will be the ones who shape the future of work in these vital sectors.
Absolutely. And it's not just about organizations adapting, it's about individuals too, taking ownership of their careers, developing those in-demand skills, and being open to new challenges.
So it's a two-way street. Both organizations and individuals have to be proactive and adaptable.
Exactly. It's a partnership. Organizations need to create opportunities for growth, and individuals need to be willing to learn and embrace those opportunities. And together, we can create a workplace that works for everyone.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights with us today. This has been a really enlightening conversation.
My pleasure. And for all our listeners out there, I encourage you to keep exploring these topics. Read articles, attend conferences, engage in conversations about the future of work. The more informed we are, the better equipped we'll be to navigate these changes and create a workplace that works for everyone.
That's great advice. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, from the unique challenges facing HRM in the public and nonprofit sectors to the emerging trends that are shaping the future of work.
It's been a great discussion. I hope our listeners are walking away with a deeper understanding of the nuances of HRM in these important sectors.
Me too. And something you said earlier really resonated with me, that idea of public, nonprofit, and private sectors becoming more interconnected. What are the implications of that for the future of HRM? I mean, where do we go from here?
Well, as these sectors start to converge and collaborate more, I think we'll see a blending of HRM practices. Maybe public sector organizations will adopt some of the flexibility and innovation you see in the nonprofit world.
And maybe nonprofits can benefit from the data analytics capabilities that are more common in the private sector.
Right, it's a cross-pollination of ideas. And I think it has the potential to lead to some really exciting developments in HRM.
Makes me wonder about the future of HR professionals themselves. What kind of skills are they going to need to thrive in this new world?
Well, they'll need to be incredibly adaptable, comfortable with ambiguity. Think about managing a team where you've got like traditional government employees working alongside nonprofit social workers and private sector tech contractors.
Wow, that's quite the mix.
It is. And it takes strong communication skills to bridge those cultural divides. And of course, they'll need to be tech savvy, comfortable using data analytics, familiar with all these emerging technologies like AI.
It sounds like the role of HRM is becoming even more strategic, even more complex.
Absolutely. HR professionals will need to be proactive, anticipating challenges, shaping the organizational culture. It's less about administrative tasks and more about big picture thinking.
Less paperwork, more leadership.
Exactly. It's a real shift from being transactional to being transformative.
We've talked a lot about the challenges, the opportunities, but what about the rewards of working in HRM? What makes this field so compelling, especially in the public and nonprofit world?
For me, it's the impact. Knowing that your work is contributing to something larger than yourself.
Whether it's improving public services or advancing social justice or protecting the environment, there's a real sense of purpose.
There is. You don't always get that in a purely profit-driven environment.
And you're supporting the people who are out there making a difference every day.
Exactly. You're empowering the people who serve the public good.
That's powerful. And I think that's what makes HRM in these sectors so unique and so rewarding.
I agree.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've really explored the ins and outs of HRM in the public and nonprofit world, the challenges, the trends, the future outlook. It's been quite a journey. Any final thoughts for our listener before we wrap things up?
Just this. The world is changing rapidly, and the way we work is changing right along with it.
Yeah.
And HRM has a crucial role to play in shaping that future, especially in these sectors that are so vital to our communities.
It's an exciting time to be working in this field, challenging but exciting.
It is. And for our listener out there, I just encourage you to keep exploring these ideas. Challenge those assumptions. Be part of the conversation as we figure out this whole future of work thing together.
I love that. Well, thanks again for joining us on the deep dive. And until next time, keep learning and keep growing.
It has been a pleasure diving deep into this with you. Hopefully our listeners are walking away with a better understanding of, well, HRM and these really important sectors, right?
I hope so too. Thinking back to something you said earlier about those three sectors, public, nonprofit, and private, becoming more interconnected, what are the implications of that for HRM? Where do we go from here? What's next?
Well, as those lines get blurrier, we're likely to see more and more blending of HRM practices.
Like public sector organizations taking a page from nonprofits in terms of, say, flexibility and innovation.
Right. And maybe nonprofits learning from the private sector about how to, really effectively utilize data analytics.
It's like a cross-pollination of ideas and approaches.
Exactly. And I think it could result in some really interesting new developments in the field.
Makes me wonder about the future of HR professionals themselves. What will they need to thrive in this evolving landscape, with all this change happening?
Adaptability is going to be key. They'll need to be
Sure.
able to navigate ambiguity because things are going to get more complex.
Can you give an example?
Sure, just imagine managing a team with like traditional government workers, nonprofit social workers, and tech contractors all working together.
Wow, that's a lot of different perspectives and work styles to manage.
It is. So communication skills will be essential too, building bridges between those different cultures. And of course, they'll need to be tech savvy,
Right.
data analytics, AI, all that good stuff.
So it's not just about being people-focused anymore, right? You need that tech side too.
It's both, for sure. It's becoming more and more strategic, more complex.
Less about the day-to-day HR stuff and more about the big picture.
Exactly. Less paperwork, more leadership, moving from a transactional role to a truly transformative one.
We've talked about the challenges and opportunities, but what about the rewards of working in HRM? What makes this field so compelling, especially in the public and nonprofit sectors?
Well, for me, it's the impact. Knowing that your work is making a real difference in the world.
Contributing to something bigger than yourself.
Right. Improving public services, fighting for social justice, protecting the environment. You don't always get that sense of purpose in a purely profit-driven job.
And in these sectors, you're supporting the people who are making that difference happen every day, right? The people who are really on the front lines.
You are. It's about empowering those who serve the public good.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes HRM in these sectors so unique, so rewarding.
I agree. Well, this has been a really eye-opening conversation. I think we've covered a lot of ground today, exploring all those nuances of HRM in the public and nonprofit world. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we say goodbye?
Just this. The world's changing fast,
Yeah.
and the way we work is changing with it. HRM professionals have a big responsibility to shape that future of work, especially in these sectors that are so crucial to our communities, to the world.
So it's both an exciting and a challenging time to be in this field.
It is. And for anyone listening, keep asking questions, keep challenging those old assumptions, and be part of this important conversation. We need to figure out this whole future of work thing together.
I love that. Thanks again for joining us on the deep dive. And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you all back here soon.